I usually will tell people who want to write to just do it because I think writing is one of the few industries or paths where if you can start to write for yourself and build that confidence and start to validate that for yourself, it's gonna I don't know, give you that boost as you start to go out there and pitch yourself.
Welcome to Dishin Up Diaspora, where we explore how culinary traditions connects us to culture, history, and each other. I'm your host, Chef Emme, and today's episode is sponsored by Chef Emme TV on Patreon, a space where I share exclusive content like recipes, cooking tips, and behind-the-scenes moments you won't find anywhere else. Be sure to follow me on Patreon at Chef Emme TV. The membership is totally free, so head on over there and join for free today. And welcome back to those of you who have been tuning in. Welcome to any newbie. I'm so happy and honored to have you here today. I do have an ask for you guys. If you're enjoying Dishin Up Diaspora, please make sure that you are subscribed wherever you're listening. If you're on YouTube, make sure you are following me on there. And if you have some extra time, I would love an honest review. Your support and honest feedback is really going to help this podcast continue to grow. And also be sure to follow us on Instagram at Dishin Up Diaspora Podcast and follow me on Instagram at ChefEmme_. Today's guest is a powerhouse in food media and storytelling. Danielle Dorsey is a James Beard Award-nominated journalist, editor, and writer known for her sharp voice, deep curiosity, and thoughtful coverage. Danielle currently serves as the senior editor and writer of guides for the food section at the Los Angeles Times. She's previously held a role of senior West Coast editor at Thrillist, and her work has appeared on Travel and Leisure, Culture Trip, Essence, Travel Noire, and much more. Her writing often highlights Black and Brown-owned businesses and explores the rich intersection of food, culture, and community. She's also a trusted voice in LA's dynamic food scene with past appearances on Good Day LA, KCRW's Greater LA, and All Things Considered, and has even guest judged on Netflix Pressure Cooker. Danielle, thank you so much for being here. I'm so honored to have you as a guest today.
Oh my God, thank you for having me, and thank you for that wonderful intro.
Yes.
I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you. Okay, before we get into your story and everything that I'm so curious to find out about, I kind of start with the icebreaker that I like to call quick dish. I'm going to name two things, and then you just pick whichever one speaks the most to you.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Fine dining or street eats?
Street eats.
LA taco truck or San Diego seafood market?
LA taco truck.
Okay. Sweet plantains or savory?
Savory.
Okay. I'm with you on that one. Early morning flights or red eye adventures?
Oh, that's tough. Probably red eye adventures.
A solo trip with a notebook or a group trip with good food?
Well, that's also tough. A group trip with good food.
Nice. And then early mornings or late nights?
Early mornings.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm an early bird.
Early bird. I want to be so bad an early bird. I kind of am now with the baby, but still. But I'm also not really a night owl. I don't know what they call the in-between. Okay, I want to start at the beginning. You are a Cali girl. Were you born in San Diego? Born and raised, or?
I was born in the Inland Empire.
Okay.
In like a small town called Fontana, and grew up in Riverside, which is in Southern California, and also in San Diego. And then I moved to LA for college when I was like 20, and then have just been out here ever since. But yeah, my mom still lives like an hour away from me. Likewise, like my whole maternal side, my grandparents they moved to Southern California in 1955, and they have 4 children who also all kind of spread out across Southern California, and a lot of their brothers and sisters also moved to Southern California from the South. So I have a huge
Yeah.
family out
I
here.
love
So yeah,
that.
deep Southern California roots.
I love it so much. Tell me about growing up in California, in Southern California in particular. Like, how was your childhood? How did food? I'm mostly curious about how food showed up in those like early years.
Yeah, I was like pondering this question. I think when I was really young, it kind of showed up mostly in sort of like a utilitarian way. My parents got divorced when I was like 6 years old, and I have two younger brothers who were basically like toddlers when they
Mm,
got divorced. And so my mom was an educator, my dad worked in finance, and so they were both really busy. And so food was oftentimes at home like about what makes sense
mm-hmm.
when mom just worked 8 or 9 hours and, is trying to get food on the table, but maybe also like grade papers.
Yeah.
And likewise with my dad, like his, I think, approach was kind of, okay, what's something relatively simple that's gonna please these three kids, and often we were seeing him on like weekends.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it kind of showed up in that way. But one thing that's always really struck me about my mom's cooking in particular, and I think like I adopted this style, is that like no matter what she's making, she has a very intentional, organized, thoughtful, and like I don't know, she makes like really casual seeming dinners feel
Mm-hmm.
really special. Like we would have like, chili dogs and French fries, or like she makes really good tortilla soup. But the way that she would kind of like lay out a buffet and
Yeah.
just like really take such care in whatever she was making, made it feel special.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I kind of find myself doing the same thing now because
Mm-hmm.
when I cook at home, it's often pretty simple because I eat out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of how it first showed up, I
Okay.
think.
And did you, when you were like, when did you know you wanted to be a writer? Was that pretty early on as well?
Yeah, that was super early. I wouldn't say like food showed up. I think at
Okay.
first it was like my mom would tell you I've carried a notebook that I would write in like Harriet the Spy style.
I love it.
Basically from like the time I could write, like 6, 7 years old, I was
Yeah.
just like carrying a notebook around and writing observations. And then when I was like 9 or 10, we got like our first family computer. And so then I was always on that, like writing little stories. And so, yeah, when I was looking at college and kind
Mm-hmm.
of thinking about career, um, I was like, okay, either I want to be an author or I want to be a journalist, and have always kind of tried to sort of to have to for my work to have something to do with writing and for me to
Yeah.
have that outlet in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So some positions I've like had have been more like writing forward, some are more editing forward. But that's kind of like my North Star.
Yeah. And so when did like food become kind of a center of that world for you?
Yeah, I sort of came to food through travel.
Mm-hmm.
I had been working a full-time job as a technical editor and was freelance writing as a travel writer. And that just kind of grew and became a larger and larger part of what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when you're traveling, a lot of the times, what you're looking for and what is reported on has to do with food. Like food is, I would say, at least 50, 60, 75% of what you're looking at, and what can like shape the culture and the
Mm-hmm.
place where you are when you're traveling. So
Yeah.
even though I was travel focused, food was always showing up in that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was the pandemic when I was kind of forced to be more local,
Mm-hmm.
and especially when our social lives were really just limited to restaurants, that I really started to hone in on food specifically and LA's food scene in particular.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I always yeah, travel and food is like hand in hand. I always say like it's when I worked at the school district here and really tried to bring in like more cultural foods. It's how you it's the best way to learn about a culture. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's the best. And coming from Brazil to the US, like food was such a shocker to me, and just trying to explain like my culture through food, obviously being a chef, like that's my career, because I just feel like it's the best way to really like explain who I am, where I come from, just like the story. You can really, it's like, I was talking to a chef here on one of my podcasts, and he like kind of um, calls himself like a culinary anthropologist because like you could really like the facts are there when it comes to food
Hmm.
ingredients. You can really trace things back to their roots and like find out why certain people are certain ways and like
Oh,
do certain things.
absolutely. I mean, I'm a huge like history nerd,
Yeah.
but I always find it super interesting. A lot of times when I travel, I love to visit like archaeological ruins. And a lot of times, they will have bakeries that are
Mm-hmm.
part of those excavations. And it'll be like, or, maybe they will have evidence there they had vineyards or something
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
But food is such a bridge. Like I always say, everybody eats. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's something that connects everyone, regardless of whether you're eating on the higher end or the lower end in terms of price. It's something that connects us all. And for me, it's so fascinating finding those links of ingredients that travel across borders, but are used in different ways
Mm-hmm.
or have like represent different have different representations or symbolism in a culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved
I
diving
know.
into all
I'm
of that.
loving that too. I that what comes to mind is like tapioca for me.
Mhm.
And just like the story of tapioca. And it's like nobody like I feel like not enough people really know like what it is. Even I think people think it's just like a standalone ingredient and don't really know that it's like from the
Yeah.
cassava
Or
root.
yeah, or like that's what I was gonna say, like the associations that they'll have with them. Like they might be like,
Hmm.
oh, tapioca, boba,
Exactly.
Asian
Completely.
food and culture.
Yeah.
And so like not
Hmm.
necessarily dispelling that because it's like, okay, yes, I
Yes.
see how you're making that
Yeah.
association, but like expanding the view to be like, oh,
Hmm.
but this is
Yeah.
actually where it originates from, or this is how this culture translates it.
Exactly. And it brings us all together too, because it's like, what else is going to connect Brazil, West Africa, Asia, like
Yeah.
the
I
cassava
mean,
root?
another ingredient that I find that's super fascinating that's like that is hibiscus.
Yes.
Like it's
Yeah.
like sorrel in
Mm-hmm.
Africa, West Africa, and Jamaica in Latin
Yep.
America, and sorrel and also in the Caribbean as
Mm-hmm.
well. But yeah.
Ugh, I love that. I feel like I could talk about just like ingredients and their history and how they traveled, for a really long time. But let's get back to you. I think it's really important to like, as a black woman, I think it's so important for especially like food media to just be diverse and have different voices and have like different representation. I kind of wanted to see if you can speak more about that, like why it's important to have diverse voices in food in like power positions in food media, and how has your identity shaped the way that you approach storytelling. um we'll just leave it at that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so important. I want to say the most important because like we just said, like we all approach food so differently. We all have different priorities around food, whether it's my priorities as a single person with no kids or someone's priorities as a working mother who does have kids.
Mm-hmm.
There are politics in terms of food and where it comes from and who's making it and who's picking it in terms of fruit and vegetables. And when you aren't including, to me, it's always a benefit to include as many perspectives as possible and to try to be as, it's very difficult to be completely comprehensive, but
Mm-hmm.
my goal is to always try to be as comprehensive as possible and try to include as many perspectives as possible. Also because I think growing up, I do know what it's like to not see your culinary heritage
Mm-hmm.
reflected in the media or celebrated in restaurants, or really feeling like you have a lane. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
when we think about like Italian American food or even Mexican American food in California and the West Coast, and like how integral these cuisines are to our understanding of regions
Mm-hmm.
or communities. Um, you want to cast a wide net. You want to make sure that like you're really representing and like um, and highlighting like the breadth of what's there. Um, and for the, can you remind me the second part of your question?
Like how has your identity shaped the way that you approach like
Yeah.
storytelling through your work?
I think it definitely does. I mean, growing up in Southern California as a Black woman who has deep roots here, like
Mm-hmm.
I still don't really see that reflected. You know, I don't hear about people talking about what Black Californians are doing in
Mm-hmm.
terms of food. And often I feel like the way that Black American cooking is framed is like it's very limited to like the South.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of our lens. And there's much more recognition that uh, Black American traditions informed much of our American culinary traditions as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm really passionate about sort of unearthing and giving recognition to the chefs and the foodways and the traditions that sort of have informed my life as a Southern Californian.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't, yes, of course, like my family is from the South. So,
Mm-hmm.
of course, those traditions have shaped how I eat and how I translate food.
Yeah.
But also, given that my family has been here for 75 years,
Mm-hmm.
those traditions have evolved and changed and adapted.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting to me to look at like more recent, like last 10, 15, 25 years of like, okay, how has this community influenced the way that we eat?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I feel like for like a really long time, obviously food media really centered like white chefs, white voices, very like Eurocentric like cuisine.
Mhm.
Have you? I feel like I've seen that landscape started to shift and really, shift with voices like yours and Kayla Stewart and just so many really like telling this more than just that focus. Have you seen that landscape shift as well?
Yeah, I have seen it shift. And I do feel like there are more people from diverse communities
Yeah.
actually telling those stories, which I think is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was where food media was like really lacking and still sometimes
Mm-hmm.
misses things, is like you have people telling a story that they don't have direct experience with, or they're
Yeah.
missing nuance, or they're telling it in a way that feels like not insensitive, or just
Mm-hmm.
like it's not being handled with the proper care that it deserves.
Yeah.
So I do feel like I've seen more, and that's great. I think the thing that still kind of frustrates me is like the way that it is sometimes framed. Um, I don't like, obviously, I'm just trying to think of how I want to say this.
Mm-hmm.
Black Americans represent like 10% of the overall US population. So I
Mm-hmm.
understand that we're a minority here. I don't necessarily always like that framing of
Mm-hmm.
like that these cuisines are like on the fringes and that
Yeah.
they're not as influential as I believe they are.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you look at like the way that our cuisines have developed over the last couple hundred years, and some of the ingredients that like show up across different cuisines.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a continued frustration, just that like the
Yeah.
framing sometimes, like the sort of
Mm-hmm.
exoticness
Yes.
of that framing.
Yeah. Like
Um,
ethnic cuisine.
yeah,
That word really
and you're,
bothers me.
yeah, especially when it's like you're talking about these really diverse cities like
Yeah.
LA or New York or DC. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I don't know, like, is West African cuisine like so
Right.
exotic if
Yeah.
we're in DC or
Yeah.
Houston? You know what I mean? So I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's kind
Yeah.
of missing.
That totally makes sense to me. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so telling these stories, these big stories that you tell, it's important. I'm sure you like, really take a lot of care in making sure you're telling it in a way that is caring, I guess. I can't think of a different word besides care. How, well, leads me to my next question. How do you take care of yourself while doing this work? I'm really, this year have come into this like self-care era of mine. Just, both with like the work that I do as a chef, like is, very strenuous on my body and my mind, but also just like personal life as well. And I think just as
Yeah.
Black women, we are not told to take care of ourselves enough and put a pause and like really like, live a little bit of a soft life and not just always like survival and stuff. And so, yeah, I just was wondering if that is something that you kind of prioritize as well.
Yeah, it definitely is, and it's definitely like an ongoing struggle and not
Mm-hmm.
something that I'm perfect at.
Yeah.
As you were asking me that question, it made me think back to the beginning of this year and the Altadena. Well, there were
Mm.
fires all over
Mm-hmm.
LA, but I pursued a story in Altadena
Mm-hmm.
about like the longstanding Black-owned businesses that were there, and it involved going to Altadena, while these fires were still happening, while it
Yeah.
was like, I don't know, 0% contained,
Mm-hmm.
and talking to, restaurant owners and residents who had lost their homes, who had lost their businesses, who didn't know, or didn't know, who weren't able to go back to their homes and didn't
Yeah.
know what was standing or didn't know what the damage was,
Mm-hmm.
or didn't know the standing of their neighbors. So much was up in the air and so
Yeah.
much trauma. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember coming home like at the end of a day of like interviewing a bunch of people and stopping by a bunch of resource drives
Mm-hmm.
and literally like being like buzzing
Mm.
with like I guess adrenaline,
Yeah.
cortisol.
Yeah.
um and and then I think like 2 or 3 days later I just like crashed
Mm.
like zero energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I say all of that to say like what I am trying to do is to be more, is to not wait for the crash
Yeah. Yeah.
and be more proactive and to kind of know, to not, I think I often like will wait for the signs of like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like my shoulder's hurt, I have tension, or,
Yeah.
I have a headache or something, some sort of physical
Right.
indicator that I'm
Mm-hmm.
exhausted or that I've like
Yeah.
overworked myself. And I'm trying to like pre-anticipate that of like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you worked more this week.
Yeah.
So like even though you don't feel exhausted in this moment,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you take it easy or
Yeah.
maybe you read a book or take a bath, or walk the dog or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of trying to be a little bit more strategic and like plan those things
Mm-hmm.
before I
Before.
need them.
Yeah, exactly. Before it's like the warning light comes
Yeah,
on. For
exactly.
sure. Yeah. And oh my gosh, my family and I, we were literally there in LA like the weekend before the fire and like came home. But my husband, our family, his uncle lost their house in the fire, and we just visited them like a month or two ago, and they took us to the neighborhood, and oh my gosh, like devastating,
Yeah,
devastating.
it's
And
pretty
yeah,
devastating.
yeah, I mean, all my love to that community, to LA as a whole. It's really, yeah, it's going to be a journey to get
Yeah, yeah,
back at
absolutely.
it for sure. But yeah,
Yeah.
and then also, right, I'm on my cookbook writing journey. And I mean, I'm not like a career writer or anything. I do love writing, but I've definitely, with like deadlines and kind of just, it's a lot of pressure, I feel like, writing and like the deadline. So that's also why it came up to me like, my gosh, if I had to do this as work all the time, I feel like I would need a lot of like breaks and like self care day. So I was wondering, but yeah, definitely, I love that you're kind of like wanting to even start thinking of taking care of yourself even before like the little aches start. For sure,
Mhm.
super important, super important. Um, do you ever feel the pressure to like represent, a whole community when you're writing? Like, do you ever
Mm.
kind of like feel this pressure to tell the story a certain way, or, you know?
I feel a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I think I feel pretty good about
Yeah.
like I'm just one person, I'm just
Mm-hmm.
one perspective, and that's the
Yeah.
perspective that is going to frame my writing. But that being said, I feel an enormous responsibility to the communities that I write about, to those traditions,
Mm-hmm.
to Black traditions. I think, because of what we spoke about of
Mm-hmm.
like those cuisines not getting as much attention, those stories not being told with care, or being told by people who don't belong to the community.
Mm-hmm.
I want if I have access, if I have understanding or perspective that other people don't necessarily have, that can add layers and color and vibrancy to a story, then yeah, it feels like my
Yeah.
responsibility to try to use that.
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. I want to talk about your James Beard nominated story. And I
Oh,
believe the
yeah,
title
okay.
was Warmth and Black Tradition Around the Thanksgiving Table, right? And that came out in LA Times.
Yes,
Yes,
yes, it came out. Yeah.
yeah, I love it. And I really like just felt this like deep connection to it because Thanksgiving in my Brazilian American home is just so like unique to us, and we've kind of like made it our own thing. And I think one of the chefs that you wrote about was saying how like it was like the only day that they're like back off and don't cook. And it's totally like, I feel like everybody always asks me like, so what are you making for Thanksgiving? I'm like, nothing at all. I'm sitting my butt down, my mom's doing all the cooking
Yes.
just how she likes it, and I'm like enjoying it. So I loved that, those stories came to life, and I'm
Oh,
so
thank you.
excited that you are recognized for it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited too. It was a super special story to write, and yeah, I guess to like for anyone who hasn't read it, it is basically a few different recipes from different chefs of all different backgrounds, and all together the recipes are meant to come together as a single Thanksgiving spread. And so there is a recipe from Rashida Holmes of Bridgetown Roadie with her macaroni and cheese pie, very similar to the macaroni and cheese pie that she serves at her restaurant, which is amazing. There are two recipes from Keanu Moju and her book, Africali, cookbook, amazing book. And then there is, oh, two more recipes actually. There's a mincemeat cookie from John Cleveland, who used to have a restaurant called Post and Beam that closed earlier this year. And then there is a lovely carrot cake recipe from Nia Lee, and they are a food stylist and food futurist.
Mm.
So it was really great to be able to bring all of their perspectives and expertise and backgrounds and traditions together to
Yeah.
to make that really fun spread.
Yes, I love it. I love it. What advice would you give someone wanting to be a food writer, editor, like do what you're doing?
Oh wow. That is a good question. I usually will tell people who want to write, to just do it. Because I think writing is one of the few industries or paths where you really can pursue it without needing like outside affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, eventually you want to get paid and you want to hopefully get a job. But I think like first doing it and like validating yourself as a writer can be really huge.
Mm-hmm.
I think like in terms of confidence and putting yourself out there, because speaking from experience, like even after I had published my writing and, online and
Mm-hmm.
websites and stuff, I still hadn't like integrated that I was a writer. So I think like if you can start to write for yourself and build that confidence and
Mm-hmm.
start to validate that for yourself, it's gonna, I don't know, give you that boost as you start to go out there and pitch yourself. And then I would say also, um, like leaning into your unique story and your unique perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever your expertise or your passion may be around food, whether it's like agriculture and foodways or specific cuisine, really like drilling into that
Yeah.
because there's so much to cover. So like trying to do what feels popular or what you think people are gonna like. I always say like someone's probably already done it. So like
Mm-hmm.
you might as well lead with what makes your perspective unique and what is
Yeah.
actually interesting to you.
I love that. That's great advice. Yeah, and I feel like transcend writing too, because even with like culinary cooking, it's like just focus on you and what you bring to the table.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because we're all, especially with social media and stuff, we're
Yeah,
taught like, well, this is what people want, and that changes
totally.
constantly, like got
Yeah.
algorithms and all that. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's tempting to like want to keep bending yourself to like, well, this
Yeah.
is what people are searching for.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's even more reason to stick with what you know
Yeah.
because those algorithms and trends are going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's better to like focus and refine your skill. And like hopefully those trends will like overlap with what you like to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be your moment to shine.
Yes, I love that. Okay, this might be a loaded question, but what do you hope your legacy will be?
Oh
And
my gosh, that is
maybe
a
not even
huge.
just as a writer, a journalist, as a cultural storyteller, but like what, yeah, what do you hope to come?
Oh, that's such a huge question. I think I really, if I could inspire other people to feel like it's a little bit easier to do this or like that they have permission to do
Mm,
this. Like if someone sees my writing or my story or what I do and that makes them feel like there is space for them or like their perspective matters, I think that's incredibly important to me. I think ultimately just wanting to create more lanes for people to tell more stories and to feel like those stories matter,
mm-hmm.
regardless of whether or not they're currently being shared.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, that's
that's
important
great.
to me.
Yes, awesome. Danielle, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to gotten to know you a little bit more and super again excited for you, your nomination. I love following everything that you're doing and I will continue to do so. Thanks for
Oh,
making
thank you.
yes,
This has
thanks.
been wonderful. Thank you so much for having
No,
me.
thank
It's been
you.
great.
Thank you. All right. You guys, don't forget, make sure you are subscribed to Dishin Up Diaspora wherever you are tuning in, and I will catch you next week. Thank you.